Why do they do that? That's the stupidest thing in the world. Alrighty, in this video we are going to have a look at this engine, make sure it's all hunky-dory, and replace bits if we need to. Now I've gone down a little bit of a different path with this one. It's not the 66cc/80cc. This is the 50cc variant. So it is, I will say, substantially smaller. I was wondering whether or not it was just a marketing thing, but no, I mean, it really is a smaller motor. The first thing I noticed was on the top here is these dome nuts are way smaller. They're just eyeballing that 10 mil instead of 14, which is on the ones that I know. Exhaust port's the same, more or less size. Just popping my finger in there and feeling the gasket, there is a bit of a lip all the way around. So I will be putting the new gasket on, but I will use this one to just practice shaping that out, because if I do slip and make a mistake, I'd rather it be on a piece that I'm throwing out anyway. Again, with the intake, we'll pull this off, tidy up the gasket, and we'll make sure that works. First thing I will do, however, is we'll check the clutch, because on the first two motors I had, the clutch plate was bound on there and it would not spin. So I know I haven't got a brilliant frame here, but we'll just make do with what we can. Alright, so there is our drive sprocket in there. So what I'm going to do is, it is tempting to grab that, but you don't want to be pushing any pressure on. So I'm going to grab thumb on the case there. It is fairly tight, but pulling that in, you should be able to freely move this little sprocket, which it kind of wants to move, but this being my third motor, and even though it is slightly different to the other two in capacity, they're all basically the same, and I've found that pretty much everything is over tightened from the box, which is what we're doing now. And before I get stuck into the head and the jug there, having a bit of I am having a bit of an experiment today, seeing what works best with the camera angles. And because I'm rather tall and this table's rather short, I either have to hunker down like this, or I'll just try and level it up a bit. It's a bit of a trade-off between comfort and frame. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to pull these screws out and replace them with these. Now, if I can frame up here, just eyeballing it, there is a little bit of overhang there, but if you look, if we can get in there and look closely enough, you can see here, oh, there we go, there's a bit of overhang in those screws anyway. So the quality is not, it's not what you'd call it's not what you'd call careful engineering, I'll say. Alright, so now you always want to be a little bit careful breaking these for the first time, because they just spray paint over the top of the whole thing, and unfortunately that means spray painting over the screws, and sometimes that paint can set in there and it can make these harder than they need to be to get out. And also, if you're not careful, you can strip the heads on these screws, which is precisely why I'm replacing it, because if there's one thing I've learned, you will be into this cover more than any other part on the bike. Alright, so let's throw that one out. And alrighty. So you might like to have the black look in there. It looks a bit more, stealth, if that's your thing. Personally, I would just prefer to have sticking out a bit. Now, you can just go out and buy smaller bolts. I mean, these are 25mm screws. You get away with using 20s. If this overhang happens to be a problem for any reason, then I'll just go out and I'll replace them with shorter ones. But for now, that's all we're going to do. So as tempting as it would be to just throw away these screws, I'm going to hang on to them for spare parts, because they are a fairly, bulky screw, and that is an 8mm thread as well, which can be really useful in a pinch if something drops out. Say from the manifold here or the exhaust manifold there. I haven't had a great deal of trouble with the intake side, but definitely the exhaust port side. So, tightening or doing anything up, always do a cross pattern where feasible to do so. Now this pattern, it's not exactly, a circle. So you just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that'll do it. And if you're loosening or tightening things incrementally, as in only a little bit at a time, you won't run into much trouble. So what I've done there is I've taken the slack off of all of them before going and unwinding the whole lot. Alright, so this is the other bit that's critical for the first time. Because of the spray paint setting it, you might find that the cover sticks to the gasket. So just very, very gingerly let that up. Now that screw is still holding on by about a turn. Alright, now you can't really see here, but exactly what I was talking about. I do have spares if I need to, but just in case you don't, this is exactly what I'm talking about, the spray paint sticking to the gasket. That's a very, very, very bad thing. If you've got a spare magneto magnet lying around, you stick it in the tray, and then all your bolts will stick down in there as well. So it's a nice little life tip there for not losing screws. One I haven't actually utilised yet because I'm always losing screws anyway. So let's have a look at, I'll just stand it up here first. Alright, so this is our clutch assembly and our bevel gear. Now you can see here they have got a nasty little bit of grease in there, which, it'll get you going, but you want to add some more fairly liberally, preferably sooner rather than later, which I will be doing. But for now, the focus is getting that clutch spinning. Now, we're pretty lucky this time as it's started to spin straight away. I won't be needing to make any adjustments. There is a photo in my video titled Photo Diary of a Motorized Bicycle Build. There's a photo of the second motor there where I had to prise this clutch off and one of the pads had actually fused. It had stuck to the wrong side of this plate. The engine wasn't turning at all. And this, again, this is before I ever put it on the bike. I did what I'm doing now, only I didn't record it, I just took photos. Took it apart, struggled with it, found the problem and resolved it. Now the only other thing I'm really going to do here is make sure that that's nice and turned in as well. This screw can come loose and the vibrations will loosen this little flower nut off. I haven't personally had that happen yet, but I have heard of it. So if you do need to adjust the clutch either by winding this in to make it tighter or winding it out to make it looser, make sure that this is secure. I personally would not recommend using Loctite on this one because you do need it to be adjustable, and you will be in there every couple of rides to adjust it, especially as these school eraser clutch pads that come with it wear out, and they will wear out particularly quickly. Alright, so first thing we're going to do, look, it's not in terrible condition. This is just a piece of cardboard. I was going to replace this. However, looking at the fact that it isn't actually torn, it's just a little bit frayed and blackened around the corners, I'm going to leave it on there for now. I don't want to use my spare gaskets unnecessarily. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go fetch my grease, and we'll just stick a bit of extra grease around the inside here. Now I want to show you another tip that I've been picked up on. It's mostly for this stage here. Now you did see me struggling to pull that. You get your handy little spark plug tool. It's good if it's a long one like this. The one that came with this new kit is not this one. It's even longer, so the longer the better. The only thing I think, if your tool's going to impact this screw here, look, just take it out. You don't want to be damaging that. There's your clutch lever. Alright, so you can just stick that on there. Gives you a bit more extra leverage. And look, that's turning fairly freely, considering I'm just turning that little sprocket in there with my thumb, and very careful, let it go. You should not be able to move that little sprocket with the clutch engaged. So if you're not holding that lever in and that sprocket down there is moving, something's wrong. So we've just got our run-of-the-mill grease there, and I'm just using a bit of a cotton tip like that. And all I'm going to do is just sort of poke it around the edges. Another reason why I took that gasket off, even though I'm going to reuse it, is I don't want an excess of this grease sort of getting around there. So I will admit that I never properly greased these gears on either of the two motors that I have. And that's just because I didn't have the grease on hand. I had been counting on that little amount that was in there to do the work for me. Right, now, what I'm going to do, where did I put my spark plug? There we go. Well, edit that snafu out, won't I? All right, so what I want to be able to do is, I don't want to be poking around too close to here. I want to get all the grease in and around here where that's where the contact point is. That's where you'll need the most anyway. But I need to be able to turn the entire motor over. Now, with the clutch disengaged like that, you're only going to turn in that inside part. And you're not going to be able to turn it by moving this sprocket with your fingers. And under no circumstances do you want to put anything in there to try and jam it open. So what we've got is a frustrating mix of, can we see that? Flathead and Phillips head. I'm going to have to replace that too. Unfortunately, not today. Why do they do that? That's the stupidest thing in the world. I cannot for the life of me understand why they felt the need to mix and match. I can tell you right now that has frustrated me. Alright, so we'll just take our clutch case off. Now I will say, when you are tipping this motor up, you've got to be careful of that little rod and the ball that sits at the bottom of it. So with the clutch cover off, just make sure that you never go more than upright. Don't tip the engine back this way unless you've got a perfectly clean work area, which for the record I don't. So tips and tricks. We're going to get our spark plug tool here, which very, very usefully sits on the end there. Alright, so what we're going to do, okay, watch this. Screwdriver in there. Now when doing this, you've got to make sure there's no spark plug in, because you're turning the whole motor over. You don't want compression in there. So we'll turn it right around, and if you can see, we have, no, you cannot see because my camera work is shocking. Right. I have moved, there we go. All the grease I did put on is now down there, and I've got a little bit of room to smoosh it in around the edge as well. The plus side is that also moves the grease around this bevel gear here. Alright, and just for now, we are just going to rest the case on there, just so we're not constantly, you know, doing it up and undoing it, because that would be bad. Alright, maybe we can try and move all this shebang-a-bang a bit closer. Alright, so we've got grease all the way around now. So all I'm going to do is manually turn the motor over using our trick with the spark plug socket in the back. Now you don't really want to do this unnecessarily for two reasons. We haven't pulled the top off yet. There's a few issues we might have to address in there. Like the piston being the wrong way round. I have not had that yet, but we just never know. And also there's no lubrication in there. So even though it's only turning over slightly, if there is anything like burrs or anything sticking out that might scratch the wall of the cylinder, the less chance you give this motor to do damage to itself, the better. So, now always remembering to just sit this clutch cover over the back when you lay the motor down. It just ensures that your little clutch mechanism back there is not going to fall out and lose bits. So I will say you need to be very careful. I'm not going to pick the motor up here, but very careful not to get grease in and around this plate. So you need to make sure that you wipe it clean, because anything that gets under the plate will affect how well this clutch is actually able to work. It's not a wet clutch, it's a dry clutch. There should be no moisture in there whatsoever. So we do want to make sure that we wipe all the excess out. It doesn't really matter how much mess you make with the grease, as long as you're very, very vigilant on cleaning up afterwards. So especially where the gasket contacts, because anything that's going to hamper the effectiveness of that gasket is going to shorten your engine life. And in this case, it's moisture. The moisture from the grease will get into that cardboard, which acts like a sponge. Now, if that focuses in, you can see around here, I'm going to say that's from overspray from, you know, when they've sprayed it from silver to black. Looking at it side on, it doesn't look critical. And I will say I am happy to put that on for now. Mainly because I know that I'm going to be getting back into this case multiple times. So for whatever reason, that's not lining up. So oh, look at that. So I've just had a low battery warning there, so that just means I have to bring in a charger. Alright. So we're going to lose all of those Phillips head screws for now. We're going to throw our clutch cover back on. Now these are M6, not M8s, I think I said before. Again, I'm not worried about it mismatching for now because I'm constantly going to be going back into this case to adjust the clutch as it wears out. So consider it a work in progress.